It's tea to go! Getting started with Splendid Teapot Racing. Hello, my name is Melissa Honig, and I'm the lead organizer of the Watch City Steampunk Festival in Waltham, Massachusetts. One event that I often run at other people's events is the new sport that's sweeping the world, Splendid Teapot Racing! Splendid Teapot Racing is an activity usually found at steampunk events and science fiction conventions. Basically, you take a remote-controlled car, attach some sort of teapot to it, and drive the car through an obstacle course, trying to complete the course in the fastest time with the most obstacles cleared. However, if you're not very good at driving a remote-controlled car, don't worry too much about it, because in this sport, failure is half the fun, and bribing the judges is usually allowed. In this video, I'm going to cover some of the basics for you to consider if you're interested in making your own teapot racer. Please note that any of my recommendations are solely my own opinion. Origins. Splendid Teapot Racing, as an organized competition, originated in New Zealand when a steampunk known as Countess Simona was looking for an activity that a friend in a wheelchair could participate in. Somehow they got from that idea to, let's put teapots on remote-controlled cars, and a new sport was born. You can find a complete list of rules, advice for judges, and guidelines for making your own obstacles at splendidteapotracing.com. Things to consider. While you can spend a lot of money on high-end, hobby-grade remote control vehicles if you want to, for purposes of this video, I'm going to assume that you're just starting out, and will be using the sorts of cars you can find at a toy store or order from the big online retailers for under $50. Other than fitting into the size constraints for vehicles and needing some sort of teapot, there really aren't any hard and fast rules about what kind of remote-controlled vehicle or teapot to use. However, here are some tips to take into consideration. Teapots. I'm using a fairly loose definition of teapot here. People use teapots, tea kettles, children's tea party sets, teapot-shaped objects, and whatever else they can convince the judges to allow. Note that actual tea is not necessary. It's just going to make a mess of the race course. Whatever you use, here are a couple of things to keep in mind. First, be careful about the teapot's weight. If your contraption becomes top-heavy, it can be harder to steer precisely, and it's more likely to topple over. Second, use something that is either sturdy enough to survive when your racer inevitably falls over, or that is cheap enough to replace if it gets wrecked. In other words, please do not use any actual valuable antique teapots. Vehicle type. As a base, you need a remote-controlled vehicle that you can attach a teapot to and drive through an obstacle course in a precise and controlled manner. People have made racers out of those extreme trick cars that jump and spin, but since you're going to be attaching a teapot to this car, you'll have to work carefully to make sure your stunt car won't just knock the teapot off the first time it flips. Also keep in mind that this vehicle is possibly going to have to climb up ramps while carrying a teapot. You want a car with enough power to get up an incline. You can get some very tiny remote-controlled vehicles, but they may not have the power you need, or even enough clearance to get up onto the ramp in the first place. You don't have to stick with car models as your base. Toy tanks, bulldozers, and other models with tracks rather than wheels can also make excellent racers. My own favorite base model is a rock crawler design. Rock crawlers are designed to climb over obstacles and will deliver power to all four wheels. In particular, I like this four-wheel drive Conqueror dune buggy style, which is sold under a variety of brand names. Another thing to consider is how you're going to attach your teapot to the car. I look for vehicles with a flat top that provides an obvious place to put the teapot. I mostly attach my teapots with strong glue, but you can use whatever works. Just be careful not to wreck the inner workings of the vehicle by accident. Battery power. When you're buying a remote control vehicle, double check what type of battery it takes. They don't all use standard batteries, and you don't want to be stuck with a dead battery when it's time for the race to start. Expect that you will need to change batteries after 20 to 30 minutes of racing time. I've had a few vehicles that use a rechargeable battery pack like this one. Double check how many battery packs your vehicle comes with. Some come with 2, others only have 1. You'll want at least 2, so you may have to order a second battery pack separately. These batteries work well, but if all your battery packs are dead, you'll be stuck waiting until they recharge. This truck doesn't have a changeable battery at all. It's got a USB cord instead. Once it runs out of power, the only thing I can do is plug it into a USB port and wait for it to recharge. The choice that gives you the most options is to buy cars that take standard AA or AAA batteries and use rechargeable batteries to cut back on waste. I will charge up multiple sets of batteries the day before the event so that I have plenty of backups on hand. Plus, worst case scenario, it's easy to find the right kind of batteries in a local store. No matter what battery type your vehicle uses, you should always turn it off when you aren't actively racing the car, because if it's switched on, it will eat battery power, even if it's just sitting there. Controller frequency. The remote-controlled cars that you find in toy stores will usually operate on one of three frequencies: 27 MHz, 49 MHz, or 2.4 GHz. This refers to the transmission frequency that the controller uses to send commands to the vehicle. The important thing to realize is that when it comes to the 27 and 49 MHz cars, one remote control will send command signals to every vehicle using that frequency. This means that if you have two or more cars using 27 MHz, they will all respond to the signals from one 27 MHz controller. If you want to race two of this type of car against each other, you need one to use 27 and the other to use 49. This is another reason to always turn your car off when you aren't racing it. I once saw a car that had been left on a table spontaneously drive itself off the table and smash onto the floor because it was responding to the signals from a different person's controller that was using the same frequency. The cars that use 2.4 GHz controllers work differently. They are designed to allow multiple cars to run simultaneously. Turn on your vehicle and the controller at the same time, and they'll lock signals so that one car only responds to one controller. Decorating your contraption. Much of the fun of creating a teapot racer is in how you decorate it. Some racing events will even give prizes for the best decorated vehicle, so have fun with it. It's a craft project. Take a close-up look at your car. You may find that the body of the car has little details that you can make pop with a bit of paint. Another thing you might want to do is see if you can remove the outer body of the car, either to make the pieces easier to paint or to get rid of the body entirely and build on just the base of the car. Flip your car over and take a look at the underside. Some brands attach the body of the car with these clips, which personally I find hard to remove sometimes without damaging the clip, so I'm not going to do it on this car. Other models use screws, which are great because it means that hopefully you can figure out which screws are holding the body to the base. I suggest you keep a small bowl nearby to put the screws in because they are tiny and they love to try to escape. Also, pay attention to how it came apart so you can remember how to put it back together and which screws go where. Now that I've got these pieces separated, I can paint them, alter them, or even decide to leave them off my racer entirely. You can go with a theme for your racer, just give it a simple paint job, or plaster it with random stuff you find in your craft room. Other people do that besides me, right? Before the race. Now that you've finished your racer, you should practice with it before the big race. You may find that adding the teapot has changed the way the car handles a bit. Also, a good shakedown drive will give you a chance to confirm that all the decorations you added are really and truly attached to the vehicle. Now, go make your racer! I hope I've given you enough ideas to start creating your own Splendid Teapot Racer. Maybe you'll go really crazy and start making your own obstacles too. I hope to see you at the races. Hey everybody, this is me, Melissa Honig. I'm live streaming, at least I hope I am, hope you can see me. I made that little video there not to tell you that there's one true way to do things, but just try to give you some things to think about if you're interested in getting started with Splendid Teapot Racing. And I've been running events, running Splendid Teapot Racing at events locally for a few years now. And having done a little video, check the chat, see if there's any questions coming up. Thank you for everyone who's saying complimentary things about the video. Um, One person I do see in chat is Scott Wilhelm, and I in previous years I have run teapot racing at Aresia, which is a local science fiction festival here in the Boston area. And Aresia, like many events, is going virtual for January 2021. And I admit I couldn't wrap my head around how to do virtual teapot racing in a way that made sense to me, but Scott has taken on that challenge. So Scott Wilhelm is running Splendid Teapot Racing in a virtual sense for Aresia 2021 in January. And if you are interested in knowing more about that event, he's been posting to our Facebook group, Splendid Teapot Racing Massachusetts. And you can learn more there about what he's figured it out. He's got a system, so we'll see how well that does. And I'm just going to look at chat again. What is the most elaborate or largest course I've ever seen? I have seen some really amazing props in videos, like like ramps. You had to spiral up and get down, and some really elaborate kind of tunnel things, where you've got to drive your car through the tunnel, and there's a lot of creativity that goes into the making of the obstacles as much as the creating of your racer. Coming through. Hello. TeslaCon's course looks amazing, says Scott. Back up at the top, Russell suggesting getting a little magnetic bowl for handing the tiny screws. And yes, those little tiny screws, they want to get away from you. They do want to escape and go skittering under the refrigerator. So I have a couple of my cars here. If anyone cares to look up close, this is the one that I said I liked the most. Those Conqueror racers, the dune buggy style. They're rock climbers, and they get over the obstacles really well, I find. And I like this one. I got a little tiny dollhouse. You can see it. Little tea set and little cookies there on the front. So this is the garden party racer. Put that back. But I admit, having said in the video that I like this particular type of car, I was in TJ Maxx the other day, and I found this from Sharper Image, Side Drifter. It claims that it'll drive sideways. I haven't unpacked it. I haven't tried it yet, but I saw that, and it was like $20. So it's like, for that, I'll try an experiment, and I don't even know how that would apply in a teapot race, but, just for the sheer amusement value of a car that claims it can drive sideways, we'll see what that does. So, we got any other questions in chat? Scott Wilhelm says, that looks like a sexy car. Yeah. Well, then we'll have to put a teapot on it and see how that goes. I mostly get my teapots by going to thrift stores, yard sales, so this is kind of my latest acquisition. Again, little kids teapot, not an antique. This is China, so with enough use, it'll crack. I do find particularly because I've been making multiple cars and using them as loaners when I'm running the races, because it's not a lot of fun when everybody shows up and nobody's got a car to race. So I've got kind of a lending library, and I find that, over time the bits get knocked off, the cars, get, they blow a gasket or whatever, they've got a lifespan. And so my goal is not to spend a great deal on any one car, but to just have fun with it and keep an eye out for good sales. Scott we've got a conversation about the preferred way of attaching your decorations. Hot glue, screws, cement. Thank you, Kodakan. And Scott is saying hot glue. And Scott, he makes a lot of his decor out of paper and cardboard. Very lightweight, which definitely gets at that aspect of, your cars, if you have too much heavy decoration between the teapot and anything else you put on it, it can really throw off the way your car drives. I had one where I had it was a ceramic teapot that was a little too heavy, and it just kind of had tendency to lurch to one side or the other, made it a little wacky to drive. I do tend to use a lot of glue, and partly that's just laziness. I have I had one where I actually just kind of tied it down. I like punched holes through the edge. It was I just kind of punched holes through the edge and kind of tied it on. And the thing with the plastic cars is, if you want to screw it on, you got to screw through plastic, and sometimes there's just not a lot there, So, and yeah, things fall off, and I glue them back on. And we got some good one car at a time on the track. So usually with teapot racing, at least the way I run them, and obviously everyone's kind of got their own variations, we usually do one at a time as the obstacle course, and we'll have things like a slalom where you got to go through, I call it my precious antique crockery, which I buy from the local cat shelter yard sale, so it supports the kitties. And bridges and ramps, and of course the ramp of doom, which is the big curved ramp. And we'll do those one at a time, and I time people, and I keep track of how many obstacles they've gotten past. But I admit I'm also a super easy judge who tends to go for the, everybody gets a prize, approach. Some judges are harder. But often at the end, we will do what we call the drag race, where we just line up all the cars at one end, and we need kind of a long hallway to do this, and then down at the far end is the line, and it's strictly a race who gets there first. Which again, if you go back to what I was talking about with the issue with the frequencies, and particularly 27 and 49, where two cars will respond to the same controller if they're on the same frequency. When it gets to the drag race, is that a bug or is that a feature? Because sometimes it's just sheer wacky car carnage, watching multiple cars responding to multiple controllers, all telling them to go vaguely in a forward direction at the same time. And then usually one of them manages to get across the finish line and is declared the winner. Looking at chat again, competition, virtual event. Yes, Scott is saying yes, there will not be a drag race at the virtual event. And makes sense. It's hard to judge the cars against each other. Checking for other things. Things I've made teapots out of. So I do, like I've said, I've used. I like children's teapot sets because they're small. This one back here, this is literally like a cheap plastic tea set from the dollar store. I have used ceramic. I have used metal. I have this one. This is like I put the whole little tea set on there. Again, lightweight. It's hard to put like an absolute. Never, I can't put a hard amount on how much something could weigh, because it kind of depends on your car. I don't have it in front of me, but that little Sharper Image robot gripper claw that I had in the video, that could probably carry a certain amount of weight, but that gripper claw itself is only good for a certain amount of thing. I bought that for the amusement value, and I haven't quite figured out how to. It doesn't go very fast, but it's got those double tire tracks, those treads, those tank style. I used to have a bulldozer. It broke. I let a small child play with it, and that was the end of it. Small children, one of the most destructive forces in the known universe. But anyway, but it would do tank treads, so it could spin in place because you could push the left tires forward and the right tires backward, and it would go, and that was, again, slow but very precise. So, sometimes speed is great, but if your car is really super fast and it just goes pting, you've got no control over it, and it just is going to overshoot the ramp, go off into the atmosphere or something. Let's see. Yes, drag race could turn into demolition derby. Sometimes I do have to. I will say to the audience, this is not demolition derby, especially with kids. Kids are sometimes kids want to play this game, and sometimes kids just want to drive the cars around. And so, that's fine. I have started like packing in a couple of extra, just the cheap cars. It's like, here, kids, you want to drive? Just go drive that around. But it is not Demolition Derby, and sometimes you have to stop the kids. It's like, no. Sometimes the adults want to play Demolition Derby too, especially in the drag race with the conflicting frequencies. It becomes Demolition Derby whether you wanted to or not. Let's see, largest teapot racer I have seen or heard of. I don't have a good answer for that. There are, in fact, if you are playing according to the New Zealanders' rules, there are, in fact, size limitations, so that everyone's kind of working from the same base set of rules, and that when we're designing obstacles, that we know that your car should be able to get through them. So I don't have a good answer for that one, sorry. No liquid tea, but is delivering something like sugar cubes or a biscuit ever part of these races? Not that I have done so, but I could imagine it. One variant that I have done, although I need to rebuild my setup for it, was teapot racing sheep herding. And what this is I built a little pen for the sheep, and I'm using little dog toy sheep, little squeakers. And this was back when I had the functioning bulldozer, and would use the bulldozer to try to just push the sheep into the pen, much like the sheepdog is trying to herd the sheep into the pen. So that was a fun alternative. It's not a race. It's not about time. I guess if you're, how long does it take you to get the sheep shoved into the pen? And that is something that I had fun with, but I need to rebuild it someday. So, but yeah, I think there's a lot of variations you could do on the theme. Carrying something. People ask me, "Oh, can I have real tea in it?" I mean, you can, but it's going to make a mess, and we want to be respectful of the venues that we're using, not to leave a mess for them to clean up. Scott says for his virtual version that you will get extra points if you use a real teapot, and extra points if you brew tea in the pot while racing. That's going to be interesting. And yeah, I have to talk to Scott about whether all of my props qualify, or if I have to make new ones. I need to make new ones anyway. Got the same old. So anyway, that is what I came to say, and we've got Carnival starting up at 6:45. So I'm going to check one last time for any questions. And if not, again, you can always come to Splendid Teapot Racing Massachusetts on Facebook, and that is where the locals hang out, and you can ask us questions there. There are also, if you're not local to us, look for Splendid Teapot Racing in your state, or splendidteapotracing.com, or .org, sorry, where the original New Zealanders put up their rules, and you will find us hopefully at real live events someday soon. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you at a race someday soon. Bye.